Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Jai Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Gurudev, Srila Gurudev, Jai Gurudev, Srila Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev, Srila Gurudev, Srila Gurudev. Jai Vishnupada Paramhams Parivajakacharya Ashtodasar Srimad Srila Abhay Shanavin Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namah Shivadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale. Srimati Jayapataka Swami Niti Namane Namo Acharya Badana Thakir Bhavadaya. Gauraka Dhamadana Garaganamtai. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari. Vishesha Shunyavadi Prachari Deshatanine. Jai. So today we're going to read, I was supposed to read from a book, but I left the book at home. So we were supposed to read from the Ocean of Mercy a little bit. Do you have the book here, Prabhu, with you, Ocean of Mercy?
We can get it.
If you have a copy, if you can bring it, it would be great. If you have it. So I wanted to read from the Ocean of Mercy because it's the words of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. It's a very nice book, very simple book. It's, I think, about 8 chapters or 9 chapters if you have read the book. 8-9 chapters. Very nice book. But it's about Bhakti Charu Maharaj's time with Srila Prabhupada. And it's a very well-written book. So what I was thinking was, the reason why I wanted to read from that book is because I'm unqualified to speak on Bhakti Charu Maharaj. My God. You're somewhere down in the gutter and then there is this personality up in the heaven. So, the big, massive difference. So instead, in the introduction, Vrajanath Swami Maharaj has written the introduction to the book. It's a very beautiful introduction. So while Prabhu gets the book, Maharaj first writes, Radhanath Swami Maharaj writes in the book that Bhakti Charu Maharaj, ever since he was a little boy, he had some spiritual inclination. Right? So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that if somebody has had pious activities, he is born in a Suchinam or a Srimatam family. He's either born in a pious family, or he's either born in a aristocratic family. But mostly, whenever devotees, whenever we guys talk about failed yoga, we generally quote this shloka that even if you have failed your yoga, your next birth you will be born in a Suchinam or a Srimatam family. But actually, there is another shloka, a shloka that comes immediately after that, and it says that one who is actually in his spiritual journey, he's born in a Dhimatam family. Dhimatam. So there is Suchinam. Suchinam means in a pious family. Srimatam means in an aristocratic family. But the next shloka says Dhimatam, one who is actually born in a family of transcendentalists. So actually, the reason why I point this out is, in our journey as devotees, we are always hoping that we have, I can talk about myself, that I'm born in a Srimatam family, so thank you, Prabhu, thanks a lot, to be in an aristocratic position. But actually, we always desire to be born in a Dhimatam family. All right? And so this is our desire. Now, when we start reading Srila Prabhu, Bhakti Charu Maharaj's this wonderful journey in this ocean of mercy, we'll actually start seeing this journey that he has in entering into a Dhimatam family. And that family is the family of Srila Prabhupada. So that is Dhimatam, a transcendental family. Right? So, Vrajanath Swami Maharaj, he begins this story, Ocean of Mercy, this book. It begins with a young Indian boy from Calcutta, whose loving mother is stricken with a contagious disease, and soon passes away when the boy most craved her love and care. Although immediately after her passing, his family fell from grand riches into poverty. So here, the way Maharaj, it is explained is that Maharaj's dad, he was actually very rich. He had actually, he was one of the first pioneers of the Bollywood industry. And so he was explaining that, in that time, like we're talking in the 1950s, in India, he was saying that his dad had 2 cars, one for work and one for home. Aristocratic. Two cars. And in 1950s, in India, in Bombay, and his father was, in this, I think he was like a producer or a executive producer or, something like that, in the filmmaking industry. So it is quite amazing to see Bhakti Charu Maharaj, so nicely described in chapter 1, right, about, about his initial days. And then as we start reading these initial days, we start seeing something very unique in Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Bhakti Charu Maharaj is, he's a Calcutta boy, right? He's, from an Indian background. But he had some very unique relatives. One of his relatives, he lived in Germany. And he actually married a German lady. So already, Bhakti Charu Maharaj was acquainted with people who were foreigners as relatives. Right? So that kind of built his nature. So today's talk, Ghanshyam Prabhu said that we should focus on how Maharaj was a friend to everybody. So that's the talk. So I'm trying to, as I've read this book, I'm trying to see those important points about how Maharaj was everyone's friend. So you can see here that he already had that, he was able to see a Westerner, be in an Indian family situation and work nicely. So he writes very, lovingly in this book that he always, he was very close to, I forget the Mataji's name. He's written it here somewhere, but he was saying that I was very, I think it's Dorothy Ma or something like that, I felt very close to her. Yeah, here you go. Here it is. Dolly Ma, Aunt Dolly Ma. He used to call her that. Right, so he was very close to her. So he already had this, from a young child, he was preparing for his journey in devotional service. So you can see how Krishna lays the ground down, right? It's always good to see how Krishna lays the ground. Then we actually see that Maharaj, he tries his hand at being a fighter pilot. He had joined the Indian army to be a fighter pilot. Of course, he was not able to pass. He could not pass the exams. So, I mean, when I say exams, it's both the, practical exams. So, and he said that I didn't have enough money to take a commercial license, right? But here's another interesting point. So why I'm picking on these is these are some interesting points. That, what is it that a pilot does? A pilot, he takes passengers from one place to the other safely. So although from a material sense, Maharaj could not become a pilot, but from a spiritual sense, he became a Parivrajaka-charya. So Parivrajaka-charya is, what is it? He's transcendental pilot. And he is taking so many people with him to the spiritual world. So that's amazing. So, when we see these things, at least when I was reading, I was thinking, see, it's so nice that although maybe from a material sense that training did not fulfill, but Krishna fulfilled the training spiritually. Spiritually, the training was fulfilled. He has flown so many miles. In fact, I don't know, some of you have seen that video, Maharaj explaining why he's going to US. It's what amazing video, right? I don't know if you have seen that video. Maharaj is explaining why I'm going to the US. And it is so, extraordinary. When you hear it, you're like, man, this is dedication. He was saying that, a leader should not hide behind. So what if there is coronavirus? He was saying that better that, a leader dies in the battlefield. So he's using these terms. I think my Guru Maharaj, Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, had said that when he read this, he had not slept. That night he did not sleep. Because he was quite worried. He was saying that it almost felt like Bhakti Charu Maharaj was preparing his journey. So, Guru Maharaj writes that when he heard this lecture. So, but you can see this nature, this transcendental nature, right? And another aspect of being a pilot is a pilot always takes care of his passengers. Like it is his job to land the passengers safely. So that is another aspect of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, that he always managed to land people safely into Krishna consciousness. So, there is that amazing, he had this amazing way of, presenting some of the most complicated esoteric topics, like really complicated esoteric topics, in such a simple way that, you're like, yeah, it makes sense. It seems very easy. There was, I think Maharaj was, this must have been a fair few years back. Maharaj came here and he sang Gopi Gita. And so up until that time, I heard of Gopi Gita, but I didn't know any words of Gopi Gita. But so what Maharaj did was he just picked one shloka, Tava Kathamritam. And he repeated it 5-6 times, that as you're sitting in class, you just remember the whole shloka. It's just the way he sang it, right? The way sometimes somebody sings it. Tava Kathamritam. He has, I won't even attempt. He has such a unique voice. So when he's singing, as he was singing the shlokas, I'm like, yeah, and then I think I'm almost willing to bet that nearly 100% of the people sitting in the class that day remembered this Bhagavatam shloka. And it's quite a big shloka, like one line is Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavi Viriritam Kalmasha. Like, it's one of those bigger shlokas of Bhagavata. And you're just sitting there, he's singing, and you're like, yeah, I know the shloka now. So it's quite amazing. You see, so that idea of taking such, and this shloka is a very, very esoteric shloka, because actually Bhakti Charu Maharaj goes on to explain that this shloka is a glorification of Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavatam. It's amazing, isn't it? In Bhagavatam, the glorification of Srila Prabhupada. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he goes on to explain that. But the point here was that he had that piloting ability of taking everyone, like lifting everyone up, flying us, landing us into a spiritual world. So he has that ability. So as I was reading this, I found that aspect of him being a friend for everyone. Right? He didn't mind. He just picked everybody up and just taught them stuff. So that is amazing. That's something we can reverberate on. Now, at this point, Maharaj explains a very interesting point. And I will pick this point up so that we can correlate this point with how Srila Prabhupada was thinking. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj explains that although he was Indian-bodied, right, he had this great admiration for the West. He learned English as his, as his specialty, as a strong subject. And he's explaining here that how this language, English, also gave him great appreciation for Westerners. And so he wanted to become like a Westerner. He remembers when his father was a film producer. He was thinking, my dad has such an aristocratic life. Yes, this is the life. Okay, so this is what Bhakti Charu Maharaj was thinking in his youthful days. Now here's something interesting when you shift the picture. Srila Prabhupada is sitting and thinking, these Indians are copying the Westerners. Can you see the correlation? So it's so amazing, isn't it? Like when I was just reading this, I was thinking, this is exactly what Srila Prabhupada was thinking. These Indians, they're copying the Westerners. So I'll go to the West. So amazing, isn't it? I'll go to the West. I'll make the Westerners devotees. I'll bring them to India. Then the Indians will become devotees. You see the correlation? And so this particular point becomes the journey of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. This is a thought of Srila Prabhupada. This is his thought. Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he physicalizes that thought. So sometimes you're a personality and you have a thought, right? Bhakti Charu Maharaj, understands this thought of Srila Prabhupada, and as an example, you see, you have to be an example. As an example, he shows people that this is exactly how people were thinking. Srila Prabhupada's thoughts were correct. His vision of setting up the International Society of Krishna Consciousness was correct. It is interesting that Jiva Goswami, his society was called, I don't remember the exact name, but it was something like Vishwa Vaishnava Rajya Sabha, something like that. I don't remember the exact, if some of you remember the name. So if you look at the wordings, so Bhakti Vidyapun Maharaj explains that this wording of this name, Vishwa Vaishnava Rajya Samaj, when you translate it, is International Society of Krishna Consciousness. It's amazing, isn't it? It's Jiva Goswami's organization name. But if you translate it in Vishwa means international, Vaishnava, Krishna conscious people, Rajya Sabha, building a society, Sabha, a society. So, International Society of Krishna Consciousness. So amazing. Jiva Goswami is thinking this. So the reason why I'm showing this is that you can see this in our acharyas. In our acharya's lineage, an acharya thinks something and then the disciple proves the point. No, it is there. He is the International Society. We are all sitting in the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada is thinking, these Indians, they are following the Westerners. So now Bhakti Charu Maharaj starts explaining his journey. Right, his journey. He writes, I'll just read this one line, right? Like many of our friends, he had a friend, Prashun was his name, right? Prashun and I had read and been influenced by Jack Kerouac's book, On the Road. There's a book written On the Road. It's about these boys who hitchhike their way through US, from East Coast to West Coast. They hitchhike their way through United States. And so he was inspired by this book On the Road. Now, here's something interesting. This book became his transcendental inspiration as well. From then on, he was on the road. But with Srila Prabhupada, he just, on the journey then. Now, interestingly, he says that with this in mind, he decided to travel from India to the West. Now, you can imagine, coming from a town in India, small town, around the 1950s, 1960s, although you are, you feel Westerner, but you're still conservative. Nonetheless, he decides to hitchhike to the West. His plan, it goes on to say that they obviously realized that they could not go through Pakistan because, at that time, India, Pakistan, in 1950s, there was quite a lot of turmoil between the two countries. So his plan was, he and his friend conjured up a plan. They will go to Iraq from India, from Bombay. They will take a ship. They will go to Iraq. And from Iraq, they will go to Turkey, then to Greece, then to Italy, Switzerland, and then Germany. So this was the plan. So they conjure up a plan. This is, and it's very intriguing that, from a young age, he had this Parivrajaka thought. Little did he know that he will become a Parivrajaka, but at that time, he was conjuring up these plans that I'm going to travel. So he goes to Iraq, and it's very amazing when you read this, how easily he made friends. Now, interestingly enough, Bhakti Charu Maharaj explains that he never used to smoke, and that was the era of weeding, hashish weeding was the age of the 60s, the roaring 60s. That was the age of smoking. But Bhakti Charu Maharaj explained that he never smoked. But nonetheless, he made loads of friends. And when you start reading this, you'll be amazed at how many friends he had. right? So as I was reading this, and when at that time Ghanshyam Prabhu sent that message that we should discuss about Bhakti Charu Maharaj being a friend to all. When he sent that message, I remembered this line in Shad Goswami Ashtakam. You know the glories of the 6 Goswamis? There's a very beautiful poetry. Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyudao Shri Jiva Gopalakau. It's very beautiful, I'm not a good singer, but the devotees, someday some devotees can sing this, very amazing, Is it a Bengali bhajan, Prabhu? No, it's Sanskrit. Bengali? I don't know. Bengali or Sanskrit bhajan, I don't know. But it's a very beautiful, right? And in this, the very first line, first stanza of this poetry, there's a beautiful line. Dhira adhira jana priya. There's a very beautiful line. Like very beautiful. His Grace Vijay Prabhu, he's book distributor. He heads the book distribution in ISKCON. He had come to Sydney and he had given a lecture on this Dhira Adhira Jana Priya. So I remembered that. So when Ghanshyam Prabhu sent that message, I remembered, Dhira Adhira Jana Priya. And then he was explaining that how devotees, and of course, we first start with the Goswamis, how the Goswamis used to be loved. Priya means to be loved, right? Priya, Jana means, to the general class. But what class of people? The Dhira means those who are very, cultured, who are very spiritual. And then the Adhiras. Adhira means the ruffians. So the exact translation of this word, Srila Prabhupada writes, is ruffians. The rough people, the dacoits. And it is interesting that Prabhu was explaining that actually in those times, there were a lot of dacoits in the Vrindavan area. But, and the Goswamis used to live in the forest. Right? So he was saying, Dhira Adhira Janapriya. Everyone liked them. Even the dacoits liked them, and the cultured people liked them. There is this story of, I think it was Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. Maybe I am getting the story wrong. It's one of the Babajis. Either Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj or Gaur Kishore Babaji Maharaj. I don't know which one. I believe it's Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. There one time, Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj is going to the forest with his deities. So his devotees are asking, what are you doing? He says, I am going to show them, dacoits. He says, who? The deities. He says, the deities want to see dakus, dacoits, the thieves. So the people like, what? And so the Maharaj is, sitting behind a log and picking deities and saying, see the thieves. All the thieves are there. And so, you may be thinking, how come the thieves would allow these people to roam around like that? Thieves are very, if you come near their loot, they get angry. But they realize that these guys are like, renunciates. They have nothing. They will never come take our things. So, Dhira Adhira Jana Priya. And so, Maharaj, in the beginning of his journey, he focuses a lot on the Adhiras that he meets, the ruffians. Right? It is interesting that one of his friends, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj, later on he writes this as one of his friends that he had met during this journey of his. Later on, met him in Calcutta and was asking him to become his his business partner. In what? In a drug trade. In drug trading, to become a business partner. He was saying that I've set up a network in India, Nepal. I'm setting up a network of drug trading. And so he asked Maharaj, would you like to join? So Adhira, so we are talking about Adhiras. So Adhira, ruffian. So Maharaj said, no, I don't want to join your drug trade. What is this? So Maharaj writes that, he felt very sad that, he was not able to help his friend. So that is Maharaj's kindness. But this, Adhira, to be kind to even the Adhiras. So here in this wonderful, chapter 1 and 2 of this book, Maharaj shows how so wonderfully he becomes everyone's friend. And in this way, he journeys, like Iraq, he had an amazing journey. Like, one time they are hungry, stuck in the middle of the road, and these villagers, Muslim villagers, come and give them bread and cheese. So they're eating bread and cheese on the road. And all these, villagers are sitting, and watching them. They had never seen a Westerner. I shouldn't say Westerner. They had never seen a non-Arab, hitchhiking through Iraq. So they're sitting and they're watching him and his friend, Mark, Westerner. And it is amazing. Maharaj was saying that even during those times, I used to just, lay down in the sleeping bag under the sky, and I used to just wonder, how amazing this life is. That renounced position, right? And so then Maharaj, he talks about his journey. It's a very long, but very wonderful. This is a very wonderful book. When Ghanshyam Prabhu told me to speak on Bhakti Charu Maharaj, I got scared. I'm like, how do I speak? Then I thought, okay, quickly let me take a book. So luckily the book distribution team was outside. So I asked them, please give me a book. They gave it, and then I think in the course of a few maybe 6-7 hours, I just read the whole book. I'm like, man, I better read this thing. So then I read this book, and it's an amazing book. It's a very easy read. It's only 240 pages. I'm just not remember. I think it was around 240 pages, and big fonts. It's not small fonts. It's a very easy book to read. I encourage everyone to read this book. Amazing book. So then Maharaj is talking about his journey with the Adhiras. And then he makes so many friends. He finally arrives in Germany. In Germany, he picks up he decides to do his education. He starts cooking for his friends once a week. They just love Bhakti Charu Maharaj. But then Radhanath Maharaj points out something very interesting in his introduction. He says something very nice. At the peak of his euphoria, something happened. This is Radhanath Swami Maharaj is explaining. And he's talking about Bhakti Charu Maharaj. While he was in Germany, one of his newfound American friends insulted India, condemning its poverty, disease, and social atrophy. For the first time in his life, the boy felt love for the country of his birth and feebly tried to defend the dignity of India. But he realized how little he knew. It was then that he first experienced a burning hunger to understand the spiritual and cultural riches of his birthplace. So what happens in Germany one of these days when he's cooking for his friends? Some American person starts saying, India, a lot of poverty, a lot of poor people. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was trying to defend. He was saying, no, I come from a normal family. We're not hungry. And he was saying, India was a jewel of the British culture. But this American was just going on and on. He was on Maharaj's case. So at that point, when Maharaj heard this, he realized, he says, man, this is, suddenly something awakens. So first he makes his journey west. And when you read this, it's an amazing journey for him to get to Germany. Okay, a big journey. He arrives in Germany. This one conversation, he realizes, no, I have to make my way back. Then he starts reading some books. And then he sends a message to all his friends and says, I have decided to go back and learn more about my spiritual culture. And he just sits on the plane, flies back to India. And then he comes to India, and there again he journeys. Some of you may have read this book by Radhanath Swami Maharaj himself. The Journey Home, is that the name of the book? I don't remember the first book's name. I think Journey Home. Journey Home? Yeah. The Journey Home. There he explains, Maharaj writes about his hitchhiking, through Europe. He actually went through Pakistan. He was very hardcore hitchhiking. And he also goes towards the Himalaya and the Rishikesh to meet sadhus. And we see Bhakti Charu Maharaj also on the same journey. Bhakti Charu Maharaj is on the same journey. He's trying to understand, how to become a devotee. And then he meets many sadhus. But he's not inspired. He's not feeling inspired. He says, I'm not able to find my guru. So then he's thinking, what is this? I don't know, what was this, useless. So then he quits. Okay, and then he goes and he, I think goes back to Calcutta, I believe. I think he goes back to Calcutta. Yeah, actually, he does go back to Calcutta. And now the interesting thing is that in Calcutta, he meets his friend. I think it was Prashun only. I think it was Prashun Prabhu. He meets him, and now what happens is, interesting, Maharaj explains a very interesting meeting he had. Right? Very interesting meeting he had in ISKCON, Germany. So Maharaj had actually met ISKCON devotees in Germany. It's not like he did not. And he was intrigued. He was thinking, wow, look at all these people, they are singing and dancing kirtan. So Maharaj actually goes there, and there they were discussing with one devotee. And of course, Maharaj being an intellectual, he was speaking and presenting his points. And so what happens, one of the devotees got irritated. And he starts telling, you're speaking more than him, you don't know anything. And then he probably speaks a bit roughly. So let's use that word. He speaks a bit roughly to Maharaj. So Maharaj and his friends think, this is not good. And then he leaves. And then Maharaj says, after that day, every time I would see devotees passing by, I would cross the road. So it's amazing, isn't it? Sometimes a person wants to keep himself away from Krishna consciousness, right? Sometimes you know about Krishna and you're like, I don't want to. I want to do aparad. I want to do something bad. But you're not able to. Because once Krishna catches you, he doesn't leave you. It's Krishna is like that. Once he catches you, he won't leave you. So Maharaj was saying, I used to just cross the road, nothing. But now he's in Calcutta and he sees his friend Prashun. And I think Prashun's, I don't know whether it was at that time he was married or it was his girlfriend. They both had now become devotees. And so Bhakti Charu Maharaj is amazed. He's like, you became an ISKCON devotee? Remember how they shouted at us and all? He's like, yeah, but philosophy is very nice. Philosophy is very nice. So Maharaj is thinking, what's going on? So now, interestingly enough, is first we show that how he was, Maharaj was, very lovable to the adhiras, to the ruffians. Now we start seeing a change in journey. We start seeing how Maharaj becomes very loving to the dhiras, to the transcendentalists, to the devotees. So then Maharaj, he now invokes his journey into meeting Srila Prabhupada. He first meets the, temple president of Calcutta. And then I think that devotee asks Maharaj to cut some fruits for offering. So Maharaj cuts fruits for offering. And then, Maharaj is discussing with people. Now the beauty is that because Maharaj was so, good at making friends, like he could just sit and just make friends. He was so good at making friends that when he was there in the temple, he started making friends there as well. So, Adhira Janapriya, now Dhira Janapriya. So they are all thinking, man, Maharaj is so nice, he's so nice. So they, encourage him and then they ask him to come to, Mayapur. And then Maharaj comes to Mayapur, and then in Mayapur, some devotee, I think, asked him that, why didn't you join as a bhakta? So Maharaj thinks, yeah, why not? And he shaves his head off. So it's just amazing. He just shaves his head off. He was saying that by that time I had decided I don't want to marry. I have a spiritual quest. And this personality, Prabhupada, he's very interesting. Because Maharaj read, the first book he read of Srila Prabhupada was Nectar of Devotion. Right? Imagine, the first book you read of ISKCON is Nectar of Devotion. Oh man, that's quite far out. I remember I first read the, introduction of Nectar of Devotion and chapter 1. I was like, what are these, they're talking about waves. What are they talking about, devotion? I don't understand. What is this? It's too complicated. You're hard-hearted, right? So too complicated. But Maharaj, he was so soft-hearted. The moment he read, he was like, yes, this person knows what he's talking about. I found my guru. You see? By reading a book, they're like, I found my guru. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, such personalities are very rare. And Maharaj also explains, he was like, as I was listening to these Western devotees speaking shlokas and giving wonderful classes, I got impressed. Now we go back to original. What was Srila Prabhupada's thought? Oh, these Indians, they are not taking their Vedic civilization correctly. I'll go to the West, make Western devotees, bring them to India, then the Indians will learn. Bhakti Charu Maharaj now epitomizes that. Yes, this is very amazing for me. And then he goes on this wonderful journey. And, of course, then, there are so many chapters that Maharaj writes on the intimate service that he does for Srila Prabhupada. Intimate. We're not talking about, doing service. Like, for us, it's like, Prabhu opened the door. I did service today. I have done service today. I opened the door. Of course, that's also glorious. So it's not like that's not glorious. That's glorious too. So all of it is glorious. Cleaning the toilet is all glorious. Maharaj would clean, like Bhakti Charu Maharaj would clean Prabhupada's room. He would massage Prabhupada, right? And then I was reading, Maharaj was explaining how there were so many devotees who were stalwarts, like, who were icons of ISKCON. Like, some built temples, some translated, did editing. Some did, printing of books. Some, were doing, big Sankirtan movements. Some were distributing prasadam. Like, they were amazing devotees. Like, he talks about Harikesh Swami. And how Harikesh Swami, Harikesh Swami is such an amazing personality, right? He single-handedly, I think, set up the entire BBT and has printed more books of Srila Prabhupada in multiple languages than any human being on this planet Earth probably ever will. Like, he's an amazing personality, Harikesh Swami. So Maharaj also glorifies Harikesh Swami there. So, Maharaj is glorifying all these people. So then as I was reading this, some thought came in my mind. I was thinking that, usually whenever we look at Srila Prabhupada's disciples, we think about, let's say we think about, making films, ISKCON TV. See, when I was a kid, we used to have ISKCON TV, videos. The video cassettes, you guys probably don't know what it is, but we used to have video cassettes. And we used to push the video cassette in and, rewind, pause, play. And there used to be the ISKCON TV, and I remember that, they had a jingle. There was like a jingle, that they had. It was very nice, I still remember that, like as a kid, ISKCON TV, and there's, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming down. I know you might have seen those, ISKCON TV logos. So, and then, we think about people like Yadubara Prabhu. Like, yes, he's made the Acharya series. There's so many DVDs Yadubara Prabhu has made. So we think about him as that personality, Then I was thinking, I'm like, yeah. And then in glorification of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, I started thinking something. I was like, yeah. But Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj made Abhay Charan series. So the thing was, as I started looking at all the stalwarts, Bhakti Charu Maharaj was explaining, it is amazing that Bhakti Charu Maharaj had done all of that. He has done all of that in his career. In his dedication to Srila Prabhupada, he has done all of this. He's made movies. Right? Abhay Charan series is probably 100 plus, like roughly 100 plus. It's quite a big series. It's a really big series. It ran for a few years. It's a really big series, right? I think about 100 plus, series is Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj's Abhay Charan. Then yesterday, if some of you were listening to how the devotees were glorifying Maharaj, the Maharaj was now going to make he wanted to make a movie on Lord Chaitanya. So you see, he was doing television production, and it's interesting that his dad was in movie production. So he even used that in his devotional service. Like, there is nothing that Bhakti Charu Maharaj has not left in engaging in devotional service. This is Yukta Vairagya. Like, use everything. Like when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, like, devotee while eating, sleeping, like, uses everything, in my service. Bhakti Charu Maharaj, when I was reading this book, I was like, man, he has done everything. He's made movies, right? Then I was thinking, I'm like, wow, I was thinking that, my own Guru Maharaj, Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada asked him to set up Mayapur. So, Mayapur is an amazing project, right? I think maybe, 600 acres, like Prabhu probably knows. It's a big area. A lot of acres, hundreds of acres, like, of property. And then I was thinking, Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj has built the Ujjain temple. And that is also, 400, like, big, lots of space. Like, government has given the land. And the Maharaj is, I think, he has set up an Ayurvedic clinic, DT making, factory there. Like, he just set stuff up. I think somebody was mentioning that I don't know if there either is an engineering college or they're planning to make an engineering college. I don't know. I've not been there. So I have to be very honest. I have not been there, but I've heard things like these, that, that's an amazing project, ISKCON Ujjain. So I was thinking, wow, Maharaj has also done that. Right? And then I was thinking, Jayadevata Swami Maharaj, he's editing, and Pradyumna Pradyumna Prabhu, he was helping with the Sanskrit translations. Like, these guys are stalwarts, right? And then I was thinking, and then Bhakti Charu Maharaj, all the books of Srila Prabhupada, he translated into Bengali. All the books. Didn't leave a single one. Just translated everything into Bengali. So just imagine, this one person, right, has done all of these activities. That when we think, this person is famous for this person is famous for this person is famous for this. Or we think, okay, Lokanath Swami Maharaj, amazing kirtan, amazing. Oh, Maharaj is an amazing kirtan singer. You see, he has these qualities that he's able to do the best of everything, yet remain humble. And that's amazing. You see, that is the amazing. I don't know, like, you all had your own experience of meeting Maharaj. I had only, before meeting Maharaj here in Sydney, I had only heard of Maharaj. through, reading Prabhupada Leelamrita, where Prabhupada says that, they were asking that, Prabhupada, why are you giving this boy 3 months? He's just been initiated for 3 months. You're giving him sannyas. He said, don't worry. He said, what if he falls down? He said, if he falls down, he will come to the mode of goodness. I'm just saying, you have to appreciate something. So just Srila Prabhupada saying, if he falls down, he'll come to the mode of goodness. Don't worry about it. So I'm giving him. He's getting sannyas. And it's very nice, there was, I think, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Prabhu, Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj is writing that they were all discussing, and then they told Bhakti Charu Swami, Srila Prabhupada wants to give you sannyas, but you're a little young. And Guru Maharaj is also, Jayapatra Swami Maharaj saying, yeah, generally, so young. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj says, well, if you want Srila Prabhupada to change his mind, you explain it to him. I'm going. And then he goes and he starts cooking in the kitchen. So very nice, like beautiful Leela. Maharaj, he loves his god brothers. So this is pastimes with your god brothers. So, he was explaining so beautifully this pastime. And so, this is, the amazing thing is that towards the end, like I'm just trying to show you how dear he becomes to the dhiras, to the transcendentalists. That it is Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj along with Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj that carry Srila Prabhupada down into the Samadhi. Right? And then of course Narayan Maharaj is also there for the Arati and everything. But he carries them down. And Maharaj Raj is something very subtle. This is very subtle. He writes it here. Okay? He writes this very subtly here. Okay? He writes it in maybe just one sentence of this book. But it is, I'll just read the paragraph because it is quite amazing, just his thought. He says, when Narayan Maharaj climbed up, so in Samadhi they brought Srila Prabhupada down and there were stairs and then Narayan Maharaj climbed up. He says, devotees started pouring soil. I still did not move. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew what was going through my mind. Okay, in 2 sentences he's writing this. Now, we can understand what he's speaking. He just grabbed me by my hand and dragged me out of the holy pit. Maharaj actually wanted to, get buried with Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. That's Maharaj's love. You gotta appreciate love. That's how much love he had. He was like, well, if Srila Prabhupada's here, then I'll sit here in the Samadhi, I'll also get buried. But he says, then Tamal Krishna Maharaj immediately grabbed my hand and dragged me out of the holy pit. So this is an amazing personality. So we have to appreciate this personality. So finally, I want to conclude with Maharaja's words himself. Right? 2 paragraphs. Please listen. It's very beautiful. Right? And it's amazing. This is from Bhakti Charu Maharaj himself. When I had decided to join ISKCON in Mayapur in July of 1976, as a full-time devotee and shave my head, a thought had run through my mind that my hairs would grow back in 2 months. And that if I did not like being a devotee, I would return to my old life. Okay? Those 2 months have turned into 40 years. The 2 months never came. Sometimes we say that, the one moment in the spiritual, in Brahma Loka is 100 years in the material world. Here, that the 2 months of transcendental cannot be fulfilled in the material world. So when he says 2 months, that's transcendental time. So cannot. Material world, no, nothing. Brahmas will pass by. That's what we're talking. Those 2 months have turned into 40 years. But they have flown by. And by Prabhupada's causeless mercy, my life has found its perfection. My realization that I am the eternal part and parcel of Krishna, and that my life's goal is to develop my loving relationship with him, is all due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who took me by the hand and led me to that relationship. I know that I have found the true path of perfection, and that achieving success is only a matter of continuously moving forward without deviation. Sometime in the future, it does not matter when, I will reach my ultimate destination and once again be at the lotus feet of my beloved Srila Prabhupada. Now, it is very amazing, this one point, this one line, and then I'll conclude. That actually, Srila Prabhupada writes very wonderfully. Srila Prabhupada writes amazingly. sorry, I shouldn't say Srila Prabhupada writes. Sorry, the devotees write in Prabhupada Leelamrita, and some of you may have read that paragraph. I like to read it every now and then because it's very amazing. It is explained that Srila Prabhupada, he was watching the books being loaded up in Vishakhapatnam. So he had some books that he had printed that he was taking to the west. It was being loaded up into Jaladut. So there is a very nice line written there. He said that for 40 years a fire burnt in my heart. So this is Srila Prabhupada explaining, right? For 40 years a fire burnt in my heart because his Guru Maharaj had told him to translate books and preach to the Westerners. Right? So he said for 40 years that fire burnt, and now he was going to fulfill that fire. So then within 10, 11 years, Srila Prabhupada, 108 temple, like amazing amount of temples, right? You can appreciate that? Now, I want you to look at the other way. Right? So Srila Prabhupada, he kept that fire burning for 40 years. Right? Then he went out and he built ISKCON. Now look at these first generation devotees. These guys, the first generation, right? For 40 years, they have been running that organization. So can you appreciate, just look at the mood of the guru and disciple, isn't it? Guru for 40 years had this, inkling in his heart that I need to do what my Guru Maharaj said. I need to do what my Guru Maharaj said. And then he got the chance, he burst out and he did it within 11 years. Right? Look at these, these guys, these amazing Vaishnav Thakurs. That's why we call them Vaishnav Thakur. We don't just call them for fun. It's really Vaishnav Thakur. That these guys, for 40 years, they have been running it. Consistently in alignment to Srila Prabhupada. That is amazing. So, that we have to, it's like a furnace. When the furnace kicks fire, then it burns, man. It burns, right? So that's Srila Prabhupada's that 40 years, and then that same 40, that fire is coming down, and these Vaishnav Thakurs, they are, pulling this movement. So that I found very amazing. I mean, this book is amazing. I really recommend that devotees read this book, Ocean of Mercy. It has such amazing pastimes of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who was Dhira Adhira Janapriya. He was genuinely Dhira Adhira Janapriya, the friend of all. So at this moment, we like to humbly fold our hands in front of Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, and we like to ask him that we are not at the level that he is. In fact, we are in no level. But somehow or the other, if he remembers us, even in his dreams, surely, Srila Prabhupada will become merciful on us, and then Radha Gopinath will become merciful on us. So His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari. Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we're continuing the reading from Ocean of Mercy. And now we will read a little bit of the final chapter, chapter 9, Back Home. The road from Vrindavan to Delhi was in terrible shape, full of cracks and potholes, so the ride was difficult for Srila Prabhupada. And when we finally arrived at the airport, as the sun rose on the horizon, he let out a sigh of relief. I was concerned about his long flight to London and wished that he was not leaving Vrindavan. But he was inspired to preach, I realized, and the world needed him. He could not be confined to his room. A crowd of devotees, several carloads from Vrindavan and others from Delhi, had come to see him off. When Prabhupada saw Bhavananda Maharaj, who had come to Delhi to meet him, his face lit up with a beautiful smile. Bhavananda, he called. and asked him to come closer for an embrace. Maharaj was observing Chaturmasya, and his hair and beard were grown out. He looked emaciated and austere, but Prabhupada said, "You look like King George VI." Maharaj put his arm around Srila Prabhupada's waist and helped him walk into the terminal. Prabhupada asked him about the incident in Mayapur and expressed regret at the way he had been treated by the police, marched through the streets of Navadvip chained up like a criminal. "For your sake, Srila Prabhupada, whatever I go through gives me immense pleasure," Maharaj told him. "Even that humiliation was a source of great joy to me. All the way I was feeling that I was your man. I was prepared to face anything for your sake." A special sofa was waiting for Srila Prabhupada in the terminal, and the devotees arranged themselves on the floor around him. It was still early morning, but the airport was quite crowded, and many people stood around us watching. When Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Upendra returned after checking in, Prabhupada asked if they were sitting together. Maharaj assured him that all three were traveling first class. He was sitting next to Prabhupada, and Upendra was just behind them. When the flight was announced and Srila Prabhupada was ready, I placed my head on his feet and did not move. Prabhupada caressed my head and shoulders. I was dreading the separation. When it was finally time for him to go, we all watched him stride through the gate and disappear around the corner. Pavan turned to me and asked, "What are you going to do now?" "I don't have any plans," I said. "Srila Prabhupada wanted me to join him in Hawaii." "Why didn't you go with him?" "I don't have my passport here." "So you have to go to Calcutta?" "Yes." "Then come with me to Mayapur." "When are you going?" "Since I have come this far, I thought I'd go to Vrindavan. Then, maybe tomorrow, we can take a flight to Calcutta." "Great," I said. "I have to collect my belongings in Vrindavan anyway." Srila Prabhupada's quarters looked so empty. With him there, it had always been busy, but now it was quiet and seemed desolate, even though it still bore signs of his presence. His chadar was on his bed, unfolded, and his silver water cup was on his table, half full. The room still held a scent of sandalwood, eucalyptus, and frankincense. In the next room, his laundry was lying on the table and his towel was still wet. I tidied everything and cleaned the floor, my heart heavy with all the memories of the previous months. I think it's rather clear the thematic connection with Maharaj delving into his moods and experiences of separation. Even though Srila Prabhupada has not yet departed, we're beginning to hear of Maharaj's experience. And as I was saying in the last reading, the experience that Maharaj had with Srila Prabhupada in many ways can echo the experience of many that they had with Maharaj himself. I went to the kitchen and cooked something for Bhavananda Maharaj, the preparation that Srila Prabhupada had taught me, with spinach, bitter melon, pumpkin, eggplant, and radish, which he had been having almost every day. For his Chatur Masya Vrat, Maharaj was eating only boiled rice and dal without any salt, spice, or ghee, and only once a day. But he accepted what I had cooked, breaking his vow. While he was eating, I told him about the time that I had first cooked the dish and about Prabhupada's response to everyone observing Chaturmasya Vrata. He laughed and said, "Srila Prabhupada is so amazing." The next morning we drove to Delhi, flew to Calcutta, and drove straight to Mayapur. It was my first visit as a sannyasi, and the devotees were happy to see me and even treated me a bit like a celebrity. When I had been serving Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, I had not really comprehended the change in my situation from brahmachari to sannyasi. But in Mayapur it was obvious. When I had left, I had been one of them, a brahmachari amidst other brahmacharis. But now I had been elevated to an exalted position. Tirthapad was especially happy to see me. After embracing, we sat down in the park and talked about my days with Srila Prabhupada. Some of my old friends, Pandu, Nadia, Hiranyagarbha, Venkat, and Parisevana, joined us. And over the next few hours, we all sat together as I recounted my experiences in Bombay, Rishikesh, and Vrindavan. Anirudeshya Vapu wanted to become my personal servant. I was embarrassed. Again, the extreme humility of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. This was not treatment I expected or wanted, especially since Anirudeshya Vapu had preached to me and engaged me in service during my first visits to the Calcutta temple. But it was another consequence of my new position. You are my senior, I told him. How can I accept service from you? He gave the example of Govinda serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That was because Govinda was instructed by his spiritual master, Shripad Ishwar Puri, I said. Look, he said, with a smile, you have already become such an authority on the scriptures. Quite a few young Bengalis were joining ISKCON in Mayapur, partly in response to a newspaper advertisement, and Bhavananda Maharaj asked me to guide them. For the first time in Mayapur, we had a group of educated, intelligent boys joining our movement. I was giving them a Bhagavad Gita class one afternoon when the guard came in and informed me that a postman was outside with a telegram for me. The telegram came from Tamal Krishna Maharaj and read, Srila Prabhupada wants you to come to Vrindavan immediately. I was thrilled. After 3 weeks, Srila Prabhupada had already come back to India and he was in Vrindavan. I ran to Bhavananda Maharaj and gave him the news. Maharaj said that since Prabhupada wanted me, I should leave for Vrindavan immediately. That evening, I went to Kolkata, where I caught a flight to Delhi the next morning. At the Delhi temple, I found Brahmananda Swami and Giriraj Prabhu, who were about to drive to Vrindavan, so I got a ride with them. When we arrived that evening, I went straight to Srila Prabhupada's quarters. Tamal Krishna Maharaj greeted me with a warm hug and said that Prabhupada was in his room sleeping. He had developed a cough and cold. So I just sat with Maharaj in his office, talking, until Upendra came and took me inside. The room was practically dark. There was just a small lamp on a corner table. Frankincense was burning, and there was a strong smell of eucalyptus oil that had been used to wipe the floor. Upendra and I sat in the corner, watching Srila Prabhupada sleep. His head stuck out of the covers, and his body seemed to be on the same level with the rest of the bed. He had been quite thin before he had left, but now he seemed emaciated. At one point, Srila Prabhupada woke up coughing. Upendra went over to help him, and when he told Prabhupada that I was there, Prabhupada beckoned me closer. He asked me what I'd been doing and wanted to know how everything was going in Mayapur. After I gave him a brief report, he said that he wanted to sit up, so I propped him up with some pillows. He was very light, gaunt. Srila Prabhupada, I said, you have become so thin. Yes, he replied. Now this body is just a set of bones in a bag of skin. I did my best to check the emotions that were flooding my consciousness. Why did I let him go? I chastised myself. Vanamali Kaviraj had been emphatic about Prabhupada's not going. Why hadn't I listened? Why hadn't I been more forceful? Asked the senior devotees to persuade him not to leave. Then I realized that we had to surrender to whatever Srila Prabhupada wanted. He was a pure devotee of the Lord and knew what Krishna wanted him to do. And nobody could have imagined that his condition would deteriorate so quickly. I wanted to embrace him, to release all the agony from my heart in tears. Tamal Krishna Maharaj and I stayed up into the night, talking. When I wondered aloud where I would stay, he looked at me with surprise and said, "What? You're staying with me," as always. Maharaja told me about what had happened in London. Initially, Srila Prabhupada had been happy to be there. His health had been good. The atmosphere was joyous. Devotees had come from all over Europe to see him. He had been giving regular darshans, and the devotees had been in ecstasy. He had been so happy to be with them that he had just wanted to stay in the West and preach. However, soon after the celebrations of Janmashtami and his Vyasa Puja on the 6th and 7th of September, his health had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. He had developed a urinary tract infection and had a minor operation. Subsequently, his condition had deteriorated. He had hardly been able to eat and had very little energy. It was only with great difficulty that the devotees had brought him back to Bombay and traveled with him by train to Mathura. Upon his arrival in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada had wanted Vanamali Kaviraj to start treating him again. The doctor had come to treat him the next day, at which point Prabhupada had asked that I be summoned. Kirtanananda Swami and his assistant Kuladri Das were taking care of Prabhupada's prasad, so I was free for other services. Vanamali Kaviraj did not speak English and had been having difficulty communicating with the devotees, so he was happy that I could serve as his interpreter. Srila Prabhupada's condition had become critical, he told me, and he was coming to treat him every day. The medicine that had helped so much before was no longer working, however, and he thought it was pointless to continue the treatment. I told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who related the doctor's recommendation to Prabhupada, and the treatment was stopped. I felt helpless. Srila Prabhupada's condition was critical, but there was nothing we could do to help. He was emphatic that the best medicine was the holy name and that we should pray to Krishna and depend upon him. What he was going through, he reminded us, would happen to us all. I began to understand that through his own example, Srila Prabhupada was teaching us how to prepare ourselves to leave our bodies. Pisima had come to Vrindavan to see Srila Prabhupada and stood by his bed with love pouring from her eyes. Ask her when she came, Prabhupada told me. Although she was just a few feet away and could hear what he was saying, he did not want to speak to her directly. Tell him that I came this morning with my son Chandra, she replied. Ask her where she is staying. In Goswami Maharaj's mutt in Imlital, she said, referring to Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, from whom her son had accepted initiation. Why is she staying there? Why is she not staying here? My son took me there. Prabhupada suggested that they move to our guest house, and she agreed. Ask her whether she would like to cook for me. Ask him what he would like to eat, she replied. Tell her that she can cook whatever she would like to cook. But Pisima wanted to know what Srila Prabhupada wanted. Finally, he told me that she could cook khichdi. She walked straight to the kitchen with me following behind. And so there's a bit more, but we'll go a little forward through the chapter. So, one afternoon when Srila Prabhupada was in bed, Tamal Krishna Maharaj came in and asked me if he was sleeping. Hearing Maharaj's voice, Prabhupada inquired if he wanted to tell him something. Maharaj said that Jayadal Dalmai, the head of the Dalmai industrial group, had come to see Prabhupada with his 3 daughters-in-law and his grandchildren. He was one of the most prominent industrialists in India, but he was also a pious devotee of Lord Chaitanya and had great appreciation and admiration for Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada asked Maharaj to bring them in. While speaking with Mr. Dalmia, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that he had just started a Gurukul and opened a new building. He spoke about the importance of spiritual education and how the whole world was becoming degraded due to its lack. He then suggested that Mr. Dalmia send his grandchildren to the Gurukul. Modern education is simply teaching how to become a Shudra, he said, a servant. The purpose of the entire education system is how to get a job. However, your children don't have to look for a job. Rather, they will provide jobs for so many. Your grandchildren should become the leaders. And in order to become ideal leaders, they will need to know how to lead and where to lead. Therefore, they need spiritual knowledge. They need to know what the ultimate goal of life is, to become free from the suffering condition of this material nature and go back to the spiritual reality. Later on, we continue. I was usually with Srila Prabhupada when he awoke in the morning, and upon waking he would often ask, "Where is Tamal?" I would call Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and no matter what he was doing, he would immediately run to Srila Prabhupada. When he arrived, they would speak intimately, discussing crucial matters, especially about the future of ISKCON. Prabhupada was extremely concerned about the future of his movement. He related the history of the Gaudiya Math during Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's presence. How successful Srila Bhakti Siddhanta had been in preaching all over India and attracting influential people. Before his departure, he had instructed his leading followers how to manage the institution by forming a governing body. He knew that there would be problems after he departed, as often happened when an acharya is no longer present. He wanted his leaders to overcome this crisis through collective management. Srila Prabhupada described how it was unfortunate that after Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's passing, some of Prabhupada's leading godbrothers had rejected the idea of governing body and instead appointed an acharya, which had led to factions, court battles for legal rights, some of which were still going on, and the institution's eventual collapse. Although many members maintained their spiritual practice, and although deity worship was still taking place, preaching had ceased. You all learn from their mistake, Srila Prabhupada instructed, and don't make the same mistake. Manage the institution collectively through the GBC. Don't try to become a big leader, but function collectively for the pleasure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world, I have given you all everything. Now you just maintain it. And again, we see this attitude of cooperation, of so strongly working so sweetly with other devotees. Again, is so strongly embodied in the pastimes of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who so sweetly engaged and had so strongly in his mood that attitude of maintaining the integrity and cooperation of Srila Prabhupada's movement. Sitting with me in our room one day, Tamal Krishna Maharaj expressed his apprehension that we did not know what to do when Prabhupada left his body, how to put him in his samadhi. Maharaj had found out that Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj was staying at Madhava Maharaj's mutt, and he suggested I go and ask him about how we should proceed. That evening I went to the mutt, but Babaji Maharaj was not there. I was told he was in another mutt, so I went, but he was not there either. By the time I got back, it was already quite late, and when I went to Srila Prabhupada's room, he asked me where I had been. I went to Madhava Maharaj's mutt, I said. Why did you go there? He asked. From the tone of his voice, I could tell he was not pleased. I went to see Srila Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. Why did you go to see him? He asked, his voice now louder. I remained silent. Again he asked, why did you go there? His voice was like a thunderbolt, shaking the room. A cold shudder ran up my spine, and I began to shake all over. Finally, I managed to blurt out, Tamal Krishna Maharaj sent me there. He just said, oh, but I could tell he did not approve. I understood that he wanted us to remain in ISKCON at his feet and not go anywhere. Even though Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj was quite detached and did not even have a temple or accept any disciples, Srila Prabhupada did not want us to associate with him more than necessary. So we'll just go forward a bit more. Just go a bit more forward. When Jayapataka Maharaj arrived from Mayapur one day, Srila Prabhupada wanted to hear about Mayapur and see him immediately. To Prabhupada's delight, Maharaj had reported that everything was going on nicely. Although they had only 2 books in Bengali, Gitar Gan and Bhogobaner Kotha, which we were hearing earlier, Bhakti Charu Maharaj was so instrumental in publishing. They had distributed 40,000 books the previous month. When Maharaj told Srila Prabhupada that some of the landowners with property adjoining ours were willing to sell their land, Prabhupada asked him to buy 2 acres right away. He would forward the money. Prabhupada also instructed Maharaj to develop nice relations with Prabhupada's godbrothers there, to build a Nat Mandir, a large hall, at the temple of the Yogapit, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthplace, and also at his godbrother Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj's temple. Jayapataka Swami told him about the devotees' desire to start construction on a new temple in Mayapur. The original plan, to build a temple 250 feet high, was a practical one, and it could have been accomplished with $15 million. But the architect, Surabhi Swami, was increasing the height by 50 feet every day. The cost was going up $25 million for every 50 feet, and now his design was for 400 feet, and the cost was $90 million. Jayapataka Swami expressed his desire to complete the temple during Srila Prabhupada's manifest presence. At that time, Srila Prabhupada just smiled and said, "It is now very brief. At many moment I can." Maharaj's voice became faint with emotion. "We're all praying that Krishna will give you your strength back," he said. "We are a bunch of neophyte devotees. What can we do? What ability do we have? Without your inspiration, association, without your guidance, we won't be able to do anything. It will be impossible for us to do anything." And so we go forward a bit more. Now Srila Prabhupada's condition was getting very serious. And news of Srila Prabhupada's critical condition was spreading, and anticipating that Prabhupada might soon leave his body, Sriman Bhaktivedanta Narayan and Ramakrishna Bajaj came to see him. They were old acquaintances, and at one point they wanted to speak with Prabhupada privately. So he suggested that the rest of us leave the room. Before leaving the room, however, I pressed the record button of the tape recorder on Prabhupada's bedside table. When I told Tamal Krishna Maharaj what I had done, he thanked me and said it had been a smart thing to do. When the meeting was over, I took the tape recorder to Maharaj's office and played it. Sriman Narayan and Ramakrishna Bajaj had asked Prabhupada about who would be his successor, and he told them he was not going to appoint one. He was giving the legacy to all his disciples, all his followers. A few days later in the evening, several of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers came to see him. As they sat on the chairs around his bed, Prabhupada admitted that he had used strong expressions while preaching. He begged their forgiveness and requested that they all ask the other Vaishnavas to forgive him as well. Srila Bon Maharaj, sitting next to Srila Prabhupada's head, told him that he had been in a position to chastise them and that there was no offense in his action. He expressed his appreciation for Srila Prabhupada's achievement in preaching around the world, fulfilling the prediction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Tamal Krishna Maharaj showed the group copies of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Bon Maharaj, his voice ringing with appreciation, admitted that they were rich both inside and out. Inside, the books were rich with the wisdom that Srila Prabhupada had presented, and outside, the outwork, layout and printing were of the highest qualities. So we'll go forward a bit. Go forward a bit. Okay. So, towards the end, we hear that Tamal Krishna, Bhavananda, Upendra and I all went sleepless that night. At around 5 the next morning, right after Mangalati, Damodar Prasad told me that Srila Prabhupada had not passed urine in 12 hours. If he did not pass urine soon, in about 14 hours, he would leave his body. He asked if he should use a catheter to help. I described the situation to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who immediately called a meeting of the senior devotees. He told them about Damodar Prasad's report and also that Prabhupada had emphatically instructed that nothing should penetrate his body, no needles. Everybody agreed that a catheter should not be used. It was clear that Srila Prabhupada was about to leave his body. The doors of his room, which for months had been closed and guarded, were thrown open and devotees streamed in. Those who could not fit stood outside the large windows next to Prabhupada's bed. Everyone was chanting. I was standing by Prabhupada's head. When from time to time he opened his mouth, I would give him a bit of water. And then, as this went forward, at one point Damodar Prasad Shastri said that Srila Prabhupada had left his body. And what continues then, Maharaj, over the next few pages, but we'll conclude with the afterword, is how Srila Prabhupada was placed into Samadhi. And in the afterword, there's a very beautiful reflection by Bhakti Charu Maharaj. The afternoon after placing Srila Prabhupada's body into Samadhi, I went to his room, lost in the emptiness of his departure. I couldn't believe he wasn't there. Although he had always taught us that we would all have to leave the material world one day, and showed us by his personal example how we should prepare, his absence was difficult to accept. I knelt by Prabhupada's bed and laid my head on his fine woolen chadar, folded on his pillow. It still bore his fragrance. Unable to control myself any longer, I broke down and cried, as if my heart wanted to escape from its cage but could only melt in a torrent of tears. I just let my agony pour out in sobs. After a while, whether minutes or hours, I had no idea. I felt a hand on my shoulder and I looked up. It was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He did not say a word, but his touch told me that he understood and shared my anguish. Several devotees had gathered in the room, and they were all looking at me. Embarrassed, I walked out with Maharaj by my side. The next day I left for Mayapur with Jayapataka Maharaj, carrying an ornate metal container holding flowers from the Samadhi. They would be buried in a Pushpa Samadhi, above which a temple would be built where devotees and others could worship Srila Prabhupada and feel his presence. My world felt vacant. The first time I dreamt of Srila Prabhupada, the dream was so real that although in the back of my mind I was aware he had departed, I perceived him so clearly that my heart danced with joy at being with him again. I offered my obeisances and held his lotus feet, bathing them with my tears. He lifted me up and asked whether I was chanting the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra on my beads. Unable to speak, I remained silent. He asked me to show him my tongue. When I did, he took hold of it with his thumb and forefinger, and as the thrill of his touch ran through my entire body, he asked me, "Are you using it to chant the holy name?" I tried to say something, but he was still holding my tongue, and then my struggle to speak woke me up. And now I'll just read the final paragraph. Those 2 months have turned into 40 years, but they've flown by, and by Srila Prabhupada's causeless mercy, my life has found its perfection. My realization that I'm an eternal part and parcel of Krishna and that my life's goal is to develop my loving relationship with him is all due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who took me by the hand and led me to that relationship. I know that I found the true path to perfection, and that by achieving success is only a matter of continuously moving forward without deviation. Sometime in the future, it does not matter when, I will reach my ultimate destination and once again be at the lotus feet of my beloved Srila Prabhupada. Shri Shri Radha Gopinatha Ki Jai. And so with that, we hear Bhakti Charu Maharaj's words. I will reach my ultimate destination and once again be at the lotus feet of my beloved Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai.